This is AHMED for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Feels like it wasn't that long ago in Vegas. Well, it wasn't that long ago. Reflections now that the dust has settled and Wilder's knockout of Ortiz.
Yeah, fantastic, wasn't it? It was a great week. Deontay was on terrific form. Really good working with his team and also Luis Ortiz. Reflections. Blinken, you missed it. Deontay carries power from the first minute of the first round to the last minute of the last. Tyson Fury found that out late on in their fight. Matt had him 6 down at the halfway stage. We literally put the mics down, turned to each other and said, we've got quite a 2019 going on here, after Andy Ruiz had upset AJ in the Garden, and then it looked like Luis Ortiz was going to box his way to victory. But you never know with Deontay. He told us it will be brutal, it will be quick, and it was. Is there a bigger single puncher in world boxing that we've seen over the last few years? I'm not sure. You sort of go back, obviously, in heavyweight boxing through the years, the likes of Joe Louis, obviously, and in more recent times, Ernie Shavers, Sonny Liston, moving on, possibly Mike Tyson, certainly in his early days especially. But Lennox Lewis could punch really hard, so could Riddick Bowe. Evander Holyfield was more about a warrior's heart. The Klitschko's were strong punchers, especially Vitali. And obviously AJ can punch, we all know that. But as a single shot, I think you've got to say Wilder is right up there with anyone that's laced them up. And it's difficult to compare through eras, but he reminds me a little bit of Tommy Hearns, who was my hero, and his languid, loose style and how he can get the power in. Ben Davison said to me he thinks it may be to do with the density of bones in his wrist, and it was quite incredible when it happened. I saw Luis Ortiz the next morning, felt really sorry for him. He'd boxed really well for 6 rounds, but that's what you get with Deontay. So, Tyson Fury's going to have to box 12 perfect rounds to win. He can do that, but Deontay's always got the chance of pulling out that equaliser, and it's an incredible weapon to have.
Well, the time before that Deontay pulled that equaliser out, obviously it was Joshua Ruiz won after that, and Anthony admitted that Wilder's knockout of Brazil was on his mind, but this time we're in Saudi Arabia, it's just about Andy Ruiz, isn't it?
Of course it is. Before I don't believe the conspiracy theories. I think camp had gone well. I think he was beaten on the night by the better guy ultimately, Anthony, and he had to come to terms with that. But yes, I think he was probably mildly distracted with the fact that Deontay Wilder 2 weeks earlier across the Brooklyn Bridge had destroyed Dominic Breazeale, and there was pressure on Anthony, and a lot of the fighters meetings we had with him beforehand were about Deontay Wilder and about the future, so there could have been something about that. Listen, since that moment in early June, he's had to think about what he's going to do to try and exact revenge, to try and get it right this time. It's a massive fight for Anthony Joshua, arguably the biggest of his life. Of course, Klitschko was huge and an incredible moment at Wembley, and in many ways probably the peak of AJ's career so far. But I think this is more important because he needs to win this to obviously A, regain the heavyweight titles, B, regain a bit of the boxing image, and C, take British heavyweight boxing forward. If he doesn't win and he gets stopped again, then obviously there will be question marks. It's not the end of his career. He says he wants to fight on for a number of years, but it's a huge moment for him, and I think it's all about Andy Ruiz, all about how he's gone about camp, psychologically, mentally so important, and physically, what sort of shape he'll come in. And I know the weights have gone, and boxing has been the catchphrase really. He's had a lot of different sparring partners. They're a real group. I think he's taken a lot from what Vladimir Klitschko did over the years, and it'll be very interesting to see what sort of performance he puts on.
He said to the Telegraph recently, when I win on Saturday night, F everybody. What do you make of his mentality going into this rematch?
He said F everybody. He said bow to my feet. This is an angry Anthony Joshua. This is an Anthony Joshua who's got a point to prove, and we haven't really seen that, and we haven't needed to see that because he didn't sail through Vladimir Klitschko, but he's had pretty much everything his own way in terms of fights. Dillian hit him and hurt him, Povetkin first couple of rounds, and obviously Klitschko was a battle royale, but then he dealt with it on the night and got through it. He hasn't had to deal with a situation like this where he was exposed, where he was beaten up after having Andy Ruiz in a lot of trouble. He walked into a punch, and after that he fell apart over a number of rounds. And I still think he showed enormous heart to keep getting up, but it was obviously a terrible night for Anthony Joshua. And he's had to dust himself down. I think it took a number of weeks for it to really sink in. And he's been training bolted away in Sheffield, keeping the media away. Obviously there was that one day, but he's been concentrating on what he needs to do. And it's not surprising that there's some real hard language coming out from him, because it's an absolute fight, and it's a fight that in his mind he has to win to right the wrong. But of course, let's not just talk about Anthony Joshua. Andy Ruiz has become world heavyweight champion. He's had longer to prepare. He's here to retain his titles and to go on to huge fights with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury himself. So, it's all well looking at Anthony Joshua and everything that he's done right, I'm sure, in training. I'm sure the mind is fresh. I'm sure physically he's absolutely spot on. But what will Andy Ruiz bring to the table? He's done it once. He will believe he can do it again, and maybe even more dramatically. So that's the fascination with this.
Andy Ruiz, in terms of his mentality, he said there's no extra pressure going into this rematch. You truly believe that?
It's a difficult one because, Andy, there was no pressure going into the first fight. Andy played the nice guy all week. This time, if you think back on the Monday to New York, I remember he came up to me and he said, "Where's AJ? I want to give him a high five. I love AJ." Then it was the belts and all that. Listen, he's a nice guy out of the ring, but obviously he partly fooled us too. And as soon as that bell went, the switch went, he went back to being the fighter he's always been since the age of 6. He's a natural fighter, Andy Ruiz. And I think everybody, including Anthony, probably underestimated that, that force that he brought to the ring. So look, he'll say that again. There's no pressure on him. Yeah, the pressure is on Anthony Joshua. It is, of course. If Andy Ruiz loses, people will say, well, look, he had his night and Anthony Joshua had a bad night, whatever. So I don't think there is a great deal of pressure on Andy, apart from the pressure he'll want to put on himself, which is the fact that he is a world heavyweight champion. He has got huge money fights ahead of even this one. So he'll want to hang on to his titles. And probably, there is machismo, a lot of pride inside him that says, I don't want to be remembered as a 50 minutes of fame. The Buster Douglas stories, the Hasim Rahmans, and Hasim's here this week, and he got involved in that brawl in the studio with Lennox, and he lost his heavyweight title in an immediate rematch. So Andy will know that, and he'll want to do everything he can personally, I think, to avoid that happening. But if he relaxes and he fights happy, and that's a hungry and a dangerous fighter again. So he'll do everything he can to hold on to his belts, I have no doubt. And I believe that will be working the body, getting inside, and hoping to rough him up like he did last time. The key is whether AJ can prevent that happening.
Absolutely no secret that Joshua has made changes. Firstly, in terms of his physical appearance, we know he's going to come in lighter. He's looking trim. Brought in Angel Fernandez as well. How much of a factor do you think that will play in the outcome of Saturday night?
I think it's always good freshening things up. He's obviously decided to stay with Rob McCracken. He's believed in Rob McCracken from the word go, through the amateurs, through the pros. That's a good decision. He's brought a new guy in who's obviously he's fond of. He's seen him work. Looking at him work with him, it's obviously bringing some variation, some different combinations, some speed maybe, and it's all under, as I understand it, under the guise of Rob McCracken. So yeah, if it makes him confident, I like the fact not only has he brought Angel in, but also he's brought in the sparring partners. Normally, I think with an AJ camp, it's you bring them in and they do their best, then they leave, but this time I think these guys have stayed and they've come here, and I think it's a bit of a sort of band of boxing brothers, and I think that's an interesting one, because normally he has his friends and obviously the guys like Freddie and Andy and everybody that work around him, KD, but he's got a band of boxing guys, top fighters, and that's what Vladimir had, that's what Lennox used to have around him in the Poconos. I think that's a really good sign. I think that he'll be talking boxing, he'll be thinking boxing, and I think that's what he's got to do. It's such an important fight that I think his focus should be right there, and I think it's a good sign.
Intriguing stuff. Away from the main event, it's a heavyweight rumble here in Saudi Arabia. Povetkin Hunter, brilliant fight.
Yeah, really good fight. Really, really good chief support. Really excited about that. It's great, isn't it? Dillian on the card as well, Hergovic and Eric Molina. It's fantastic, and Tom Little too. Look, they're all getting involved, and why not? It's great that there's a bit of a theme to the card. Looking forward to seeing Dillian back in action, obviously, but yeah, Povetkin and Hunter is fantastic. It's a great fight, isn't it? It's a good mesh of styles. It's a good mesh of ages, of stages, of all sorts. You know, Povetkin looked good last time out against Hughie Fury, and Michael Hunter's done really well, and could be, you know, the sort of, the surprise in the heavyweight division. Still, is he big enough to rumble with the big boys? Well, look, you know, he's got a lot of ability and a lot of talent. I think this will tell us a lot more. You know, I expect a really interesting fight, one that I think Hunter can box and move and shine in, but Povetkin is a tough, hard man, and you know, he'll look to be pinning him to corners. It's a cat and mouse, isn't it? It's a fantastic sort of duel before the main one. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good night on Saturday.
Just for the UK fans watching on Sky Box Office, do you know roughly what time the ring walks will be here? So it'll be 3 hours ahead, obviously, in the UK. Yeah,
I think we're looking at the fight starting no later than midnight here, which is 9 o'clock. So my guess is that it will be somewhere between sort of 8:30 and 8:45. And it's a fantastic time. You know, if you're saying, you know, the fight starts at 9 o'clock, it's perfect because kids can stay up. It's a Saturday night. Everyone can get together. I know my kids will be staying up and watching it. You know, that's really good because normally it's 11 or around about then. So this is a good time for UK fans. It'll be late here, but yeah, I think it's terrific. So round about, you know, I would be getting involved from, well, I mean, you've got the United City derby. Then you can switch over and get, you know, maybe Dillian and then Povetkin, Hunter, and then this. It's a perfect night, isn't it? It's a great afternoon and a great evening. So yeah, fantastic for football fans and boxing fans alike. It's a huge event Saturday here, and we want everybody to watch it because no one knows what's going to happen.
Expecting it to be the biggest event on Sky Box Office ever, Adam?
I don't know about ever, but we've had some huge nights already involving Anthony Joshua, you know, with the likes of Vladimir Klitschko, Joseph Parker. We've had big nights, as you know, with Ricky Hatton, Floyd Mayweather, with Mayweather Pacquiao, with Mayweather McGregor, and many others as well. But KSI Logan Paul was a great success in its own way as well. But I'm expecting obviously a lot of people to watch on Saturday night. I think it's the biggest rematch of the year. It's the biggest night of the year in terms of British boxing and, you know, in many ways world heavyweight boxing too. But for Brits, it's a really important one. And I think you know, it's come at the right time. There's been a very powerful boxing schedule leading up to it. You know, we've seen the likes of Josh Taylor do so well against Regis Prograis. We've had Deontay Wilder setting the standard a couple of weeks ago, and even though he boxed poorly at times, that knockout power, and it looks like it will be Tyson Fury on February the 22nd. So all eyes on what happens here. You know, AJ, can he exact revenge? Will Andy Ruiz do it all over again? You know, lightning striking twice and all that. It's a fascinating one. There's so much to talk about in the next few days. Tactics are going to be crucial. Everyone I've spoken to is split about it. They're genuinely worried for Anthony that it could happen again. From a British perspective, people I've spoken to in America are very confident Andy Ruiz is a better fighter all round and will do it again. But we know that AJ's got the physical attributes, he's got a warrior's heart, and he can't be as bad again after the Garden. So yeah, it's all there in the melting pot, isn't it, Umar? Absolutely. Well, Adam, appreciate your time here in Saudi Arabia. I know you've been on your travels in Vegas, then Abu Dhabi, and just come to Saudi Arabia now, so appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll catch up with you in the following days. Thank you very much. Thank you, Adam. Cheers. He is special. Absolute dynamite. Oh my